Because I don't have a microphone, I do for the live stream, but not for in here. So if you talk, then people won't be able to hear. So I want to thank you all for coming. I see a bunch of new faces, some familiar faces. The press is here as well, and I want to thank Sun TV for live streaming this as well. And it's unfortunate. We've given them some extra time, and it doesn't look like my opponent has showed up, so that's a disservice to all of our residents and to all of you who came here. But given that, we will still follow the same format. We'll pull questions out of a hat or a box. If you guys could bring all the questions up so that we can have someone pull them and someone read them. I guess the only other thing is that time limit doesn't make any sense for each person at this point, so I guess I get somewhat unlimited time to respond. So that's just the way it goes. So I guess, starting with, and if you have any questions, you can fill them out and bring them up and put them in the box if you have any questions that pop up, okay?
Can I say just a word? One word.
Actually,
no, I just want to say, I want to say, as a trustee and treasurer of the Orland Park Public Library, I want to welcome everybody for being here. We're happy to be part of and host of this, actually a historic forum, I think it is. So go ahead. I just wanted to welcome everybody.
And can we close the doors, Mary, just so that we can keep the sound in here? Can we close the doors? That's why we closed them. Thank you. So I apologize. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for welcoming us, and thank you for letting us have it. And again, thank you to everyone who's here. Thank you to the press that came. Thank you to Mary and Anthony from the library staff, and also the IT that got all this together. So I guess I'll begin with how did we get here? So we got here with the U.S. or Southwest Republican Women First offered a debate, which my opponent declined as saying it was too partisan. So then the chamber stepped in and offered a debate as well, or a forum. And they came out with a series of rules, and we said we will attend, but we will live stream it, because taping and then putting it up later leaves room for it to be edited. And I've seen edited videos already. And so I thought it was important that everyone sees a live stream. And who could object to it being live streamed? So then they responded again, and we responded again that we are coming, but we'll live stream it. When we sent that response, there was a social media post. My opponent said the chamber said it was canceled. That was on Monday, or on a Monday. Then the chamber, over an hour later, said it was canceled. So how did they know before any of you knew? The other thing is I didn't get official notification until Wednesday that it was, quote, canceled. So I said, well, the room's here, so why not host it? And same rules, except it's live streamed. So we have live streaming here with the same rules, so that's how we got here today. It's really it's really unfortunate that my opponent, I'm going to get a little used to this cord, I'm used to wireless, but that my opponent didn't come here today. It's really unfortunate. So I'll start with some opening remarks. Many of you know my background, but many of the people watching don't. So I've been reminded that I probably should give people my background, even though I've been, for 8 years, I've been mayor. And I'm going to move this a little out of the way as well, since I won't sit on it. So I grew up here. I was adopted as a baby, and not too far down the road here on Jefferson, about a block and a half, 2 blocks. This was all, basically dirt trails back in the day and swamp. But I was adopted, raised here, went to the schools here. So I went to doctor school, which doesn't exist anymore. Center school, which was supposed to be closed back then, and is still there. Park School, Orland Junior High, and Sandburg. I left here my senior year of high school. I finished in Arizona, went to Arizona State, a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering. From there, I went into the Air Force. So I went to navigator training, was fortunate enough to be top of my class there and get my pick of airplanes. So I was able to fly the F-15E, which was the hottest jet that was going at that point in the Air Force. It's still flying in the Air Force, and it's the one jet with two cockpits for its crew members. So I got a chance to see a lot of the world, a lot of Southwest Asia and the Middle East, with 3 tours over to Iraq, and or to Saudi Arabia to support southern Iraq. So Operations Desert Storm, Southern Watch. So 3 tours over there, 45 combat missions, flew with the best people that I've ever met in my life. Just fantastic people. So while I was there, I got an MBA from Duke and decided to get out of the Air Force, took a job in the city of Chicago. I had an option between Connecticut and Chicago, so I decided Chicago's my home, so that's where we'll go. We ended up moving my family back to Orland Park. What I didn't say is while I was in the military, I met my lovely wife. We have 3 kids. So we came back here with 3 kids. I started a consulting job downtown. From there, 5 years after that, and if someone could silence their phone, it keeps going off, I'd appreciate it. But 5 years of consulting. Then I bought a tree service, pulled it into a tree service and landscape company, grew it from 5 people to 30 people. But during all that time, I also coached Magic basketball, Magic baseball, OYA baseball and basketball. I coached a little bit at the Y. I coached the girls for a time. So I did a lot of coaching during that time. So that's what I did before becoming mayor. And then the question becomes, why did I decide to run for mayor? If you recall, there were a lot of things going on back then. There was the Triangle, which was a disaster that I opposed from the start, which we still see the bare dirt. But it turns out they lost $47 million on that. Spent over 100, but lost $47 million. They'd run up debt from $13 million to $110 million. But the big thing was there was a pay raise for the mayor that created a giant pension grab for the mayor and the subsequent trustees that would have filled that spot, like my opponent. So it was worth $2.1 million in extra pension benefits for $16,000 in the system. So over 4 years, he was going to put $16,000 more into the system and get $2.1 million out. I thought that was unacceptable. I called everyone I knew to see if someone was running. Nobody was. So 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I talked to my wife about it. We thought about it for a week. Weekend before Thanksgiving, decided to run. The Monday after Thanksgiving, we got on the ballot. So, and from there, obviously, I was elected. But when I was elected, I learned a lot more about what was going on. And I paid attention. I had no idea. The state of our roads, the state of our parks, our buildings, the capital needs we had, they deferred all that. But losing money on the Triangle, they spent all that money on the Triangle. They didn't do these other things. I also saw a fiscal cliff that we were facing, and we had our IT was absolutely almost non-existent in the village. So over those 8 years, we've done a lot. We've cut operating expenses, we've cut debt, but starting with, and we've really focused on our infrastructure. So look at our roads. 40% of our roads were in poor or very poor condition. We've gotten that down over the last 5 years, because the first couple of years I was blocked from doing anything. The last 5 years, we've gotten that down below 17% because of the money we've invested in it. For parks, they had fixed 10 parks in the previous 20 years. We have 66 parks. Do the math. 132 years to get through all of that. Okay. That's not sustainable, obviously. So we changed how we do things. In the last 5 years, we've fixed 32 parks, completely renovated 32 of our 55 playgrounds. Plus, we've done Schuessler Park, we've done John Humphrey Complex, and added Centennial Park West. So we were able to do all of that. And we did all that financially, lowering the debt. So it went from $13 million to $110 million. In the 20 years, my predecessor was a trustee, and he was on the clerk for longer than that. Since I've become mayor, it's gone from $110 million to $86 million, with all the investment in parks, with all the investment in roads, and with all those other projects. That's because we got our fiscal house in order by fixing our operating expenses and doing things more efficiently and investing in IT, which we've done a lot of. So we've done all that, and then obviously, we've also kept you safe. If you remember the riots, kept you safe during the riots. Our police department does a fantastic job, and we give them everything. They have everything new service weapons, new tasers, new body armor, new everything. We got body cameras before the state mandated it, right? All of these things, the squad cars now get turned over twice as fast as they used to. Okay, so we have all this new stuff, and the results speak for themselves. The last 6 years are the lowest index crimes out of the last 31. And that's even in Cook County. Across all of the country last year, 360 suburbs, the 360 largest suburbs in the country, were one of them. We were number 2 for lowest property crime rate and number 5 for lowest violent crime rate. That speaks to the amazing job our police department does. And it was good before I got here. It's better now. So that's essentially my backstory and what's happened. And then going forward, what do we need to do? Well, I don't have this big grand platform because that was there in 2017. We've implemented it. All these things are in place. We have to continue fixing our roads so that they're maintainable for the long term. We have to continue fixing our parks so that we get on a sustainable long-term plan where we're fixing a couple a year as opposed to one every 2 years, because that's a lot more sustainable. It's not sustainable forever to do 6 a year like we did some years, right? But once you get them in a good position, you have to keep investing in them. You can't divert that money away to other things. So that's the plan going forward. So with that, I'll open it up to the questions. We have someone that's volunteered to pull the questions, and then someone that's volunteered to read them. I don't know if all the questions are directed at me, but I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay, this one's is for Jim Dodge. It says, please explain why you claim the village isn't transparent. How do Plan D change the lack of, what's that word? It's hard to, the lack of.
I should have said, fill out the questions and make it legible.
Transparency. So there's a lack of transparency, but please explain why.
So Jim Dodge says there's a lack of transparency. Well, that's very, very interesting because he's not here because it's being live streamed. That's what he's afraid of. He's afraid of transparency, okay? And he could have been here to answer that question, but I will tell you, he's afraid of transparency. The board meetings were not videoed or audioed before I became mayor. The first thing I tried to do was get them on video, and he rallied the troops against it so that they would not put it on video. It wasn't until we had 3 new trustees and had a 4-3 vote that we could get our board meetings on video. So he tried, for 30 years, he successfully kept things off of video. Okay, so say 15, because the first 15 years, since he was there since 1989, there really wasn't that capability. Okay, but for at least 10 years, they didn't put them on video. I did succeed getting them put on audio the first 2 years. If anyone's tried to follow those audio tracks, it's quite challenging. So video is much, much more interesting. So we've put all of that online. That's transparency. What I used to say is, they used to tout transparency. It was managed transparency. Don't see what we don't want you to see, right? We put it all out there. Everything, all of our meetings, our planning commission meetings, you get to see it all. You get to see when someone comes up and comment. It's not in the minutes saying, this person had comments, and that's it. Right? It actually says refer to the video and you can see the whole thing. So we've really brought transparency back to the village.
Mayor Keith, was there?
So that the people here can hear it. That way they can hear it. No, they can hear it.
Is this on now? Yes. Okay, thank you. So, Mayor Pekow, was there a Orland Park City ordinance passed last year in 2024 to allow the Orland Park Police to work with federal immigration, ICE, on apprehending illegal immigrants?
So in 2024, January of 2024, we passed an ordinance saying that we are not a sanctuary city and that our officers will cooperate with federal law enforcement agencies, so including ICE. So we passed that. Oh, I guess what I should also add, well, he wasn't there at the time, so I don't know what his position is on it, but I will say that when we also passed an ordinance or a resolution sometime back opposing the Safety Act, and my opponent in that discussion, there were 2 other bullets in there. One was that we oppose all efforts to defund the police, and that we oppose all efforts to prioritize criminals over law-abiding citizens and police officers. My opponent tried to strike that from the resolution. So.
Okay, Mr. Dodge, will you be increasing the salary if you win?
That's a question for him. I know that he increased the salary in 2016 to $150,000. I know that he increased it with the hopes that his friend Dan McLaughlin would get a $2.1 million pension benefit, but then he thought he was going to be the next mayor. He thought he'd be here now. And it was worth $3.1 million to Mr. Dodge at that pay. Okay, but even at the current pay, that pension for him is worth an extra $600,000, because not only did we lowered the pay to $40,000, so I did that, but I also got rid of pensions for elected officials and the pension for the mayor. Jim Dodge opposed getting rid of the pension for the mayor, tried to reinstitute the pension for the mayor, and said repeatedly that any future board can put it back. So you know what he's going to do when he first gets in. It's going to go back. It's worth, even at this lower pay, it's worth $600,000 extra dollars to him for putting $6,000 into the system. Wouldn't you like a return of $600,000 for $6,000? So, yeah.
Another one for Mr. Dodge. Yes or no, will you reinstate the pension plan for the government positions?
Well, I think that I just answered that. He's already said multiple times that he'd reinstitute the pension. Again, just to be clear, I ran on lowering the pay to $40,000. I did. I ran on getting rid of pensions for elected officials. I did. I said I wouldn't take a pension. I am not taking a pension. I am not getting a pension. Okay? So that's my record. Also, to keep anyone from being able to, even if they put in pensions for getting anything big, I put in term limits as well, which Mr. Dodge voted against when we put that up for referendum. He was one of 2 votes against. So voted passed 5-2.
Oh, another one for Mr. Dodge.
I hope there's questions for me there. If there's not, start putting some questions for me, because I really can't answer questions for him because he didn't show up.
How do you justify the village paying
Probably paying, maybe?
Developer for the Triangle project? And how do you justify giving $64 million to a contract where they only invest at $1 million? And how do you justify losing $47 million in the Triangle project? Why did you also vote to...
Okay, one question at a time on the things too? Okay, so we got it. Yeah, 6 questions at one time. Okay, so the question is about the Triangle. And so please put some questions. I mean, I can't answer Jim Dodge questions. Okay, so there needs to be questions for me about what I'm doing. So the Triangle. They basically played developer on the Triangle. They borrowed money to buy out businesses. I have it, I have him responding to me for questions I had way back when, 2010. And they gave sweetheart deals to the people they liked. They stuck it to the people they didn't like. They ended up using eminent domain on the G family to basically take out the strip center. All of that stuff was rented with operating businesses. They had some vision. They wanted to turn it into something else. So they spent 8 years trying to acquire the property even. So they finally acquired the property with a ton of money. Okay? And then they put it out for bid and nobody bids back except an apartment complex. So they get an apartment complex, which we invested $64 million. The developer put in $1 million. We put all of our money at risk for that. Okay? So that's what they did. And they put in, and we had apartments. Okay? Then, flash forward a few years, we get the University of Chicago Medical Center, which is great that it's here. It was coming anyways. It ends up there because the village came in and undercut other places to get a non-for-profit and a TIF. And I'm not going to go into how TIFs work. You can watch that online. We have a very good video from the village that talks about how TIFs work. But a TIF is all about getting additional property tax to pay for the infrastructure. University of Chicago is a non-for-profit. They don't pay property tax. Okay? So we have these 2 things there, and we have a parking garage. The other thing, and I've seen some people say, well, why didn't this will take a bit, Randy, so you don't have to rush to answer. I have to ask another question. So the question is, so the question that I've heard is, why haven't I done something? I've done nothing about the Triangle. Well, what people don't understand is in all of these deals, the apartment builders had a right of refusal till the end of 2021, into 2022. We couldn't do anything anyways. because they refused everything. They said, we want to build apartments and more apartments. And we're like, that's not happening. So, and the University of Chicago still has a right of refusal. So you have to get them on board. Well, it was obvious Flaherty and Collins was not going to get on board, so we had to wait till 2022 to even start the process. And these processes take a long time for a development like this. The good news is that in October, we basically got a new development agreement hammered out. It's actually finally, the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. It's going to be signed either today or tomorrow, or Monday. And they're going to break ground, I believe, in the coming month. So it's going to be fantastic. We're going to see a development there. No more residential, offices, entertainment, restaurants. So that's what we're going to see down there. And so we're very excited about that project. But, you know, the government shouldn't play developer. We're not good at it, as evidenced by the fact they lost $47 million, and really more than that, because we owe Metro a parking lot and we have to move utilities. So it's more like $55 million that was lost on that project. And when you hear them say, oh, it was successful, blah, 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 this was supposed to pay for itself. That's how a TIF is supposed to operate, right? So what did we get out of it? We got a metro station and a parking deck no one uses. That's what we got. And we lost, on the books, lost $47 million. The money generated from this to just pay off the principal of that $47 million would take almost 350 years. So it's a loss that the rest of us have to absorb. That $47 million, that $110 million of debt, there you go, right? It was largely tied to the triangle. Okay, now you can go. Again, I'm not on a time limit now, Randy, so.
I'm here all morning. So, your opposition has told people at the door that you're going to increase your salary by $100,000. Can you explain how this works?
Okay, so I'm not doing that, number one. I'm the guy that lowered the salary from 150 to 40, okay? Also, to raise the salary, you have to raise it 6 months prior to, it's one of the good Illinois laws. Believe it or not, there are some good Illinois laws, okay? But you have to raise that salary 6 months prior so that the public knows, so that someone can step up and run, which is what happened in 2017. I've also term limited myself. So it's 12 years, 3 terms, right? So this is my 3rd term. So we can't raise it for the next term, so that's not happening. And we've not only lowered it for me, we also lowered it for the trustees. We are all set at the 2004 pay levels, which, you know, one might say, you know, maybe they're low, but it doesn't matter. We're not in it for the money. So 2004, 21 years ago, we're at the same salary they were then.
When I drive in the unincorporated neighborhoods, the roads are horrible. What will be done for those areas?
So unincorporated areas are not the Village of Orland Park, and Village of Orland Park taxpayers will not absorb the cost of paying for unincorporated areas. That is Cook County. That is the township. And so that is who needs to take care of those roads. Yeah, you know, for those of you who live in Orland Park, you're fortunate because we take care of our roads and the unincorporated areas don't. And to put this in perspective, we have 3 areas that were incorporated many years ago, and they were built to Cook County standards at the time. Fernway, Orland Hills, and Laguna Woods. So those are the areas without sidewalks. They have ditches, okay, which we really can't change that. But when I got here, there was a 10 or 11 year project to get Fernway done. It would have gotten done, I think, this year or next, okay? All that money we said we advanced into roads, we finished that project a couple of years ago. So we advanced that. We also finished Orland Hills, not Orland Hills the city, because they copied our name. It used to be West Haven, right? Orland Hills the subdivision. Orland Hills the subdivision and Laguna Woods will be done by the end of next year, both of them. So all of those roads, but the problem with those roads is we have to redo the ditches back to their normal standards, and we have to completely rebuild those roads because they were built substandard to the current requirements. So all of those will be done. But the unincorporated areas, they are not Orland Park residents, and so we're not responsible for the roads, and it's not fair to the taxpayers to ask them to be either.
Will either candidate accept pensions for the mayor's role?
So, as I've already said, but I'll repeat this because it bears repeating and hammering, is that I am not getting a pension. I did not elect to participate in the pension. I elected not to participate in the pensions. The position is now ineligible for pension. It is true, a future board can put it back. Our board got rid of it, so we're not putting it back, right? He said on the board floor at least 3 times when he was a trustee, a future board can put this back. He signaled what he's going to do. He's going to put it back. By the way, he's already collecting a pension for being a board member. Okay? He'll just boost it. He's also collecting a pension for Metra because he was a board member there, he was appointed, and they had these sweetheart deals at Metra, okay? Back in the early 2000s, where they got all their health care benefits paid if they were a board member, and they got the pension system, and it paid more than being a trustee. So he was appointed to that for 7 years, okay? And he got health insurance benefits worth over 20 grand then a year, okay, for 1 board meeting a month, and got a pension, which he's going to get, okay? Those were so bad, okay, so egregious, and so corrupt that Mike Madigan called them corrupt. And not only did he call them corrupt, they passed a law that said it has to stop. And when they started to talk about passing that law, Jim Dodge got off that board. And so back in 2013, they got rid of pensions for the Metra position and the health care benefits for the Metra position. And then he said, I don't want any part of it anymore because I'm not getting the money. So I think he's pretty much signaled what he's going to do. But I'm not getting one and won't get one. And
Okay, 2 questions here. Let's go first one for now. Name 3 things that you have accomplished that you are most proud of during your tenure in office.
3 things that I'm most proud of. You know, this question's come up. I always have a tough time answering this because it's really a holistic approach to everything, and I don't really look at the back. I don't really look back and go, this, right? So the most important thing that I've accomplished is I surrounded myself with 6 board members who are not political. They don't play political games. They do what's in the best interest of the people of Orland Park. And I've only asked them 3 things, and they would all tell you this. I asked them to be honest with me. I asked them to vote their conscience and do what they think is in the best interest of the people of Orland Park. And despite the fact we generally agree, we haven't always agreed. And the reason we generally agree is because the solutions are usually pretty obvious. But having people that don't play politics and don't do things behind your back and don't do all that kind of stuff, I can tell you my first 4 years there with Jim Dodge, that's all he does, okay? He was my neighbor and friend. My kids babysat his kids. I still have the knife wounds from my time on the board, okay? But that's number 1. Number 2, the most important thing we've done is professionalized, so that's important for board oversight. For the village itself, the most important thing we've done is our HR department, okay, and our hiring practices. Before, it was based largely on patronage, nepotism. That doesn't mean we didn't have a lot of good employees. I'm not saying that at all, okay? But our hiring practices were abysmal. I asked for the reviews, when I became mayor, of all of the department heads for their folders and all their reviews. From 2010 to 2017, there were 2 reviews for all of the department heads total. 2 out of all those department heads. How many of you had jobs? Don't you get reviewed at least annually? Yeah. 2 people in 7 years with a review. Like, that's absurd. And every year they got the max raise, max raise, max raise. Whatever the village said, it's a 3% increase, it's a 3% increase. That's what they got. So we've done a couple things with that. One is all of our unions except for police, they're on merit now. So they actually get evaluated based on merit, not steps. It's not, oh, you've been here a year, so you automatically get this. Okay? Now, most of them do get a maximum raise because they do a good job. But some of them don't. I think I talked to Public Works, out of their 70 employees, 5 didn't get a maximum raise. So now they're getting reviewed, and it's actually impacting them in the pocketbook as well. And they're getting reviews every year. Every year they're getting reviews. Department heads, every year, getting reviews. Village manager, every year, getting reviews. And our HR practices, we've professionalized them. I don't get involved, the board doesn't get involved. We go out for bid on everything, and we look for the best people, whether they're in-house or from outside, to come in and take those positions. You get the best people all the time, you get better results, you get more production. So it's not just that we made some cuts to operating expenses, because we made cuts, and but 8 years, even at a couple percent a year, it's crawled back up to slightly higher than what it was in 2017, which you would expect. Inflation, everything else, because you've got wages are your biggest driver. But we get way more production than we did, because the people we have are productive. and we've got great employees, and so that was the second most important thing we did. And I think the third most important thing that I'm most proud of is fixing that financial cliff. We were really in trouble, and those operating expense changes, and then also so it's our fiscal picture, not just in terms of our operating, but our capital. We had over $100 million of unfunded capital needs, and they were ignoring our roads and parks. So we've really invested in all of that and set ourselves on a long-term glide path. So for me, it's those three things. It's the board, it's our HR practices, and it's setting us up for the long term for our capital and finance plan.
Also, Orland for All has indicated passing a real estate transfer tax. Mayor Pekow, would you consider instituting this type of tax?
Absolutely not. And one of their trustees, when he was on the Recreation Advisory Board, sent me an email saying that he recommends a real estate transfer tax to pay for a performing arts center. That's what he said to me. So, but absolutely not. We don't need that. We're in a good position right now with what we've done with our finances, with what we've done readjusting everything. I think we're in a good position to pay for our long-term plans.
What can be done to lower our water bills?
Well, I'm afraid to say the best thing you can do to lower your water bills is use less water. I mean, I hate to say it, but we pay from Chicago through Oak Lawn. You all know about this big water system, and it was approved under my predecessor, but it was the right thing to do. I totally agree with it. We didn't have redundant water. Okay, so if a major break comes, we lose water. Today, if you built the system, you'd build it on a loop, so that if a break occurred, you could run the water the other way. You can't do that with this because it's a straight line. So they had to run another line out. Well, because we're 25% of the water usage, we pay for 25% of that. It's about a $300 million project, so that's baked into your water bill. We run our water bill to break even, and we have done a lot to try and keep it down. So our losses, we've brought them down 90%. We used to lose a lot of water through water main breaks. We still do, but we've brought that down 90%. But we've put a lot of water, we've done a lot of water projects, and we're going to continue to do that. So right now we're doing Catalina, we're replacing the water mains. We did an area of Crystal Tree because there was a bad lot of water mains back in the 80s, and they failed sooner than expected. But we have about, I saw the map the other day, we have 7 or 8 other areas over the next probably 8 years that we're going to replace those water mains as well. So keeping your bill down is really a function of less usage. We basically pay just to cover the bills is what the water rates are set at, but they're going to go up from Chicago, so we're going to have to pass those along because we buy it from them. So that happens as well, plus all these infrastructure projects that we need. But still, compare your water bill to Homer Glen. It's half, okay? You're not going to get, and if you really think about the water in other parts of the country, you're actually paying a pretty low amount compared to what other parts, unless you get it from a well, and I don't think we want that. So we have really good water, really safe, and very good infrastructure, and that's what we're going to do to keep it.
Okay, another one for Jim Dodge. Why have you never denounced the village robocalls to your opponent and family?
That's so that's a very interesting question. I wish Mr. Dodge was here. He's not. So he has not denounced them. In fact, on the board floor, he said the answer to them is to ignore them. Well, I was denouncing them. Okay, I've had over 125 attacking me. There's probably another 15 attacking others. The only person, because even when I first got on, there was someone doing it and attacking the other trustees. It wasn't as personal as they've gotten recently. They were more about their votes and stuff. The only person never mentioned in a single robocall, Jim Dodge. Only one. So, and that includes, Fenton and Calendrell. They were all mentioned at least once. Jim Dodge, the only one never mentioned. So, and his response this time was not to denounce them. He said, report it. Right? Well, let me be clear. They're wrong. They're illegal. And they're damaging Orland Park. And I don't like them, and nobody likes them. And it's fundamentally different than someone making a robocall. I couldn't care less if Jim Dodge makes a robocall and say, this is Jim Dodge, come out and vote for me. Perfectly legitimate. Okay? We've done some of those. We've actually stopped doing any of them just because of all these other garbage calls. We've done some get out the vote calls. Ed Schuessler did one for me. I did a couple. We've done those. But never attacking people, and that it's just obscene.
What is the story about the police union endorsing Jim Dodge?
So yes, the police union has endorsed Jim Dodge. So I think the key word here is union has endorsed Jim Dodge. We have 5 unions, okay? So I represent you, the taxpayer. I do not represent the union. The union is the representation of the employees at the bargaining table, okay? I don't represent them except for the 10 or so union members that live in Orland Park. I represent you, right? So the question really is, so the police union endorsed him. He's also got money from AFSCME and IBEW, 2 of our other unions. So the question is, what is he promising the unions to get that endorsement? What's he giving away of our tax dollars to get that? Because I stand here and look, I think everyone in this room, whether they support me or don't support me, would say, I've stood up for the police, regularly stood up for the police. I've already told you, they've got new service weapons, new tasers, new body armor, lighter body armor, new body armor carriers, new rifle plates, new helmets, new shields. And this is all in the last couple of years. We've instituted new programs, a peer-to-peer support program. Brought in Leo, the comfort dog. We got Fusus for the camera system, to tie in the camera systems. We have an amazing camera system at the mall that we're tied into. We've done all this stuff. And for them, and given them 15,000 extra hours of training last year. And we're building a state-of-the-art firing range and training center. And we just approved this last week, a state-of-the-art use of force simulator. We've provided everything for them, everything. And they're among the highest, if not the highest paid police officers in the entire Chicagoland area. And they got the highest raise of any of our employees, a higher raise than any other union. So they got the highest raise, they're the highest paid, and they signed the contract in July of last year. Jim Dodge, I know for a fact, has promised them that he's reopening the contract. Why would you reopen a contract that you worked so hard to negotiate? What are you going to give them when you reopen the contract? So I think that's the question. As for me, I'm focused on results. Here's what I know. We're fully staffed. We just had someone come here from another department. We get laterals all the time that want to be here because we're a great department. We're fully staffed. When I got here, we had 96 officers on the street. We have 121 now. Okay? So we can hear about police, and it is hard to recruit police. We get less people testing and everything else, but we get more than anywhere else. Some places had like 6 or 7. We had 90 tests. Okay, we used to have 300, but we still have 90 to choose from. So officers still want to come here and be here because we're a great department. We pay well, our benefits are great, and we treat them well. And the board supports them. And the results speak for themselves, right? Safest city in Illinois in 2020, safest small city in the U.S., or 8th safest small city in the whole entire U.S. in 2021. The lowest violent crime rate for towns over 50,000 in Illinois for at least the last 5 or 6 years. Lowest index crimes for 6 of the last 31, for the last 6 out of the last 31. So that's great. I already told you, number 2 property crime rate, lowest property crime rate. Number 5, lowest violent crime rate of the biggest 360 suburbs. We do a great job. Our police department does a great job, and that's from the top down. That's our administrative staff. It's our dispatchers. It's our officers. It's the leadership. It's the chief. It's the village manager. It's the board. It's all of it. That's why it's good.
Another one for Mr. Jim Dodge. Why spread the untruths, and why all the video manipulation?
That's a question for him, but we know that he manipulated video. We know he wouldn't come here because it's live streamed, probably because he wanted to manipulate video. So, that's the beauty for me. They can manipulate my videos of the board meeting and all that because it's publicly streamed. But more importantly, I can go back and show the whole clip and say they're lying. So they're doing it because, I guess the question you have to ask is, he's got a 32-year record. Why doesn't he talk about his record? And he doesn't.
Okay, Mayor, what is your strategy for bringing small businesses to Orland Park, and what about developing Union Avenue?
So 2 questions there. One is the small businesses to Orland Park, and one is Union Avenue. So back to developing, what's my plan for developing? So my first answer to that is the village is not a developer. Anyone who tells you they're going to develop it, you should be running away, because that's how you got the triangle. Okay. By the way, they were also going to buy Silver Lake Golf Course and by first day in office all 300 acres, okay? I managed to get them to do due diligence at least, and it stopped that, okay? Because they were going to manage, and they said, we're going to develop this whole area. It's not going to be a golf course. I'm like, because the triangle's gone so well, you think you can develop 300 acres? So the village doesn't develop. What the village does do is provide an economic environment for businesses to succeed. And we've done that, and we'll continue to do that. We have the top 1% traffic mall in the country. That mall drives a ton of traffic here. So we try and we try to make sure we don't have a lot of vacancies. Aside from the Sears, we have a 4% retail vacancy. Okay? So we're doing fantastic on that. So we try to make sure that, because that helps the small business. It's all that traffic that helps bring small businesses here. We do have some incentives for backfilling restaurants. Because we had a problem with a bunch of restaurants after COVID, so we put that in place. We have some other small incentives, but the real thing is to create an environment by which people want to be here so that their businesses thrive here. And we've done that because you think we've gone through COVID. 2018, 8 months into the job, we lost Sears, Carson's Home Goods, Toys R Us, and Babies R Us all in the same month. Like, wow, great. But within 18 months, we had Von Mauer in one of the anchors, right? The Toys R Us is redeveloped, everything except for that Sears location. And believe it or not, the Carson's Home Goods, there is a storage thing. There's a pre-existing condition fight. It's been approved for 2 years, but there's a storage place going in there that was approved some time ago, which is perfect because it doesn't take up much parking. It's indoor storage kind of a place. So that's what we do. And it must be working because checked a few months ago, we have 5,000 more jobs than we had when I got in office. So we've done a great job. So those are the things we do. As far as Union Avenue, again, we don't play developer. So I know there is a property on Union Avenue that was purchased, and that person has submitted some plans to us. We've given them some feedback. So hopefully we get something done there. And I also think that this triangle development, which is projected to be done by the end of next year, all phases, I think that will help as well.
Okay, Jim, even though you're not here, why do you criticize the new amphitheater when you supported it and admitted that it won't be there to turn a profit?
Well, there's someone who pays attention. So they acquired this in 2003, and there's video of Jim Dodge, saying that we acquired this way back when because this was going to be Ravinia South. And I know because I bought near there in 2005, expecting it to be Ravinia South, and expecting that this happens. Clock ticks, 2016, nothing. It's got some hills in the area. It floods when it rains. We do one free concert a year or whatever out there. So when I arrived, I said, hey, let's start getting some concerts out there. So we started doing concerts out there, and then I found out they didn't even run electric. So we had to run them off of generators. But we learned from doing those concerts, and one thing we learned is if it rains, we can't do concerts because it just flooded. So that was a problem, right? And Jim Dodge supported that. He supported the concerts. He supported all that. He flipped on all of that during COVID. First he approved it during COVID, then he wanted to shut everything down over COVID, and then from that point on he's opposed it nonstop. So essentially they had an idea, and I will say it was a good idea. The problem is they can never deliver ideas. One of the reasons they couldn't deliver it is because they had no money because they spent it all on the triangle, right? So what we did is we delivered. So why is he upset? He's upset that we delivered something he couldn't. It's a premier venue. 1 year, hey, are there still things that are going to improve in it? Absolutely. We learned a lot in the first year. We're adding video screens this year. That'll help a lot, right? So those little things that we learn to do it better. And looking forward to, hopefully in the next few weeks, we're going to have an announcement. We're getting really close on having the three concert series there. We've moved Market on the Park there. We're changing those up. There's going to be 8 different nights, different themes, instead of a market in the park, which there really wasn't much of a market. We're just going to do 8 different theme nights. So one's like a food truck night. One is going to be truly a farmer's market night. So they're an Elvis night. They're doing all of these different things there as well. The Taste of Orland was fantastic there. We'll do that again. And then we still have the concerts as well.
I have heard rumors that our mayor plans to on increasing his salary to $100,000. Is that true? I think we went over that a few times, but...
Yep. I've answered that one.
Jim Dodge, did you run for previous public office positions and not show up for candidates' debates like this morning with Mayor Keith Pekow?
I have no idea, but he has run for office before. 32 years, 89 through 2021, he was on the board, and he ran for treasurer and for comptroller in the state of Illinois. So he has run for office, but I don't have a record of whether or not he has showed up for debates before. He clearly didn't show up to this one. So, and I don't think much was contested, well, other than his first election back in '89. I don't think much was contested. So he's, So I don't understand why you would not come out here and speak to people and answer these questions, whatever they are, hard questions, whatever. Answer the questions. That's why I have mayor's breakfast. I can say things here I can't say at the mayor's breakfast, right? Mayor's breakfast, I have to stay off the political topics. I have to stay off my opponent. I don't have to do that here because it's a forum. And he wouldn't have to do that if he was here. He wouldn't have to do that either, and he could certainly make any accusations he wants, right? And he could speak about how great he thinks his record is, but he doesn't because he didn't show up. It's unfortunate for all of you and all of you live streaming. It's really unfortunate for the people of Orland Park. He turned down not one, but two different forums.
Okay, Mayor Keith, every week and month you post all that you've done over the years, and these are facts. In fact, you always have the breakfast, you have the state of the state every summer, so you're actually posting things that you've actually done. When your opponent writes over the several months now online that none of what you said has ever been true and not done. And then you wrote, which I like, since December till now, dodging the facts. And you're still doing it today, but is your opponent running on scare tactics and lies? If all of that opponent thinks is true and you haven't done anything and how bad you are, then where is he today?
Well, so that was more of a statement than a question. Where is he today? I don't know. Is he running on scare tactics? Absolutely. I mean, the scare tactics that are out there right now, I mean, how many of you have heard the fire district takeover scare tactic? Oh my Lord. Okay. First off, the Tinley Park mayor said not true. As I said, not true. The Village of Orland Park, the fire district's not the Village of Orland Parks. We have no interest in that. It covers Orland Park and Orland Hills. I don't even know the mechanism for which you would do that, but I believe it's multiple referendums, which would, first off, it wouldn't be set, like the term limits we could put on the ballot because it just affected Orland Park. A referendum that affects multiple towns, you have to get an ungodly number of signatures just to get it on the ballot, okay? Then it would have to pass by, and I think it's greater than a 50% margin, at 50% vote total as well. In all of the towns that are affected, it's not feasible. They're doing it to try and drive people to turn out, okay? They were doing it to try and attack me, to try and attack the Tinley Park mayor, and they're doing it to try and get 3 candidates elected to the fire district. That's what they're trying to do. Okay, so that's what those scare tactics. So that's an example that's not my race, but they're trying to scare you in the fire district. Okay, it's not going to happen. And the fire district has even said we're not looking at doing this. So those are the types of scare tactics they use. They never talk about my record. They talk about me personally, and they use scare tactics. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. I have an 8-year record. Judge me by my record. And be happy to discuss the facts. You're entitled to your own opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts.
Okay, didn't say any name on here, but it says, why are village employees so upset with you?
I don't think all village employees are upset with me. Again, I'll go back to the unions. And the unions, when someone promises them more, the unions will, of course, support that. And the Chicago Federation of Labor is backed by the Chicago Teachers Union, just gave Jim Dodge and his crew $15,000. Okay? They're trying to control here. Okay? The Chicago Federation of Labor and the Chicago Teachers Union gave his wife money when she ran for the school board. And she's the president there. They have control of this, okay? They want control. I took it away. Why do they attack me so viciously? Because I took it away from them. Their gravy train is gone, okay? That's why. And they thought by bullying me and beating me up and doing all this stuff, hey, I'll tell you, it's horrible. It's horrible for my family. Okay, it's horrible for my wife. It really drives her crazy. She can't respond because she gets angry about it. She'd like to. But bullying's not going to work. I'm going to stay, and I'm going to keep pushing forward and keep the village moving forward because this is my home. Keep in mind, all of these people, not their home. They came here. and brought their Chicago way of doing things. A lot of people came from Chicago and said, I don't want to be any part of that. They came to Chicago and said, I'm going to bring that to Orland Park. And they did. That's exactly what they did. And I've gotten rid of that. Orland Park was a great place to be raised. It was a great place to raise my kids. And I want to keep Orland Park that way going forward and keep that stuff out of here from now on.
I think this one may have been touched on a few times today, but I'm going to read it again, of course. In Illinois, pension debt is the biggest driver of Illinois property taxes, which are second only to the state of New Jersey in the nation. With that fact being said, your opinion on receiving a pension after your tenure of mayor of Orland Park?
So as I've said, I'm not getting a pension. My opponent is already getting a pension, and his will expand for being a mayor. He's actually getting 2 pensions. So yes, the pension system is problematic, for sure. It is what is breaking the back of public sector pensions are crushing the state of Illinois. They're crushing the municipalities. They're crushing your property taxes. It's astute to note that your property taxes are driven by that, because you'll hear the state legislators talk about how they want to freeze property taxes. And I'm like, that's a bunch of garbage, because while the village might be able to implement other taxes, the library can't. It only can use the property tax, right? The fire district can't. It's got the property tax. I mean, there's not other revenue sources for them, right? So if funds are cut, or you put mandates in like they did for us, like body cams. Now, we wanted to put body cams anyways, but they mandated everybody do it, right? Who's going to pay for that? It's expensive. It's like almost 2 people full-time just to deal with the FOIAs associated with body cameras. So in a department as large as ours. So so you have to fix it in the state. The state has to do something about it. And there's I believe over 100 bills right now in the state trying to increase pension benefits for elected officials, or not elected officials, for public employees, which would include elected officials. And we will do everything we can to fight. And believe me, all the mayors around here, whether they're Republican or Democrat, we fight together to get rid of that. Okay? It's critical that we don't have that, because we paid, I think last year, $5.6 million into just the police fund. Okay? That's almost 10% of our operating budget for just the police pension. Okay? So it's unsustainable as is. And the Tier 2 helps a lot. And maybe eventually you can climb somewhat out of it with the Tier 2, but if they get rid of that, I mean, every town, there will be no fiscal way that we can possibly manage that.
Okay, that's all the questions, and I want to thank everybody
Well,
for
that's all the questions. We still got a half an hour.
And thank you, Mayor, for answering the questions.
Yeah, so thanks, Randy. So, well, we still got a half an hour. So if we have questions, if you could, I'd prefer that you submit them, but because there's that doesn't go back there. It's not wireless.
Yeah, wait.
Yeah.
I don't know, Mike.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because they need to hear it. So if you could write the question down and get it to him, then he can read it, because the mic's up here. Well, yeah, please go write it down. And it's just fairer that way, so that it's not. It's supposed to be the candidates to be answering the form. The fact that my opponent isn't here that's his issue. So here's another question.
Okay, Mayor, what about the audit?
Oh, so there's a question about the audit. That's a good question. So you've heard all this noise about the audit, and feel free to ask more questions about it if you want. So the audit. The issue was the 2021 audits, not the current audits. It was the 2021 audit. Here's the background of that. The auditing firm in 2021 was hired by the former village manager, Joe Lamargo, under the previous board, okay, including me, so 2018, okay? But he hired them, because that's our form of government, that's what happened. So he hired them. They did a good job in 2018, 2019, and in 2020. In 2021, they got acquired by another firm, and they basically stopped working on our audit. And anyone who understands audits, it's us beating them over the head. You can only do so much, because they can do a lot of damaging things to you. in an audit. So you have to be very careful with how you manage them. Well, it took us until December of 2023 to get them to deliver us the 2021 audit. And it was on them, not on us, okay? The board did the only thing we can do at that point, which is we fired them and said, you're not doing the 2022 audit, which they were under contract for. We went out for an RFP for a new auditor. RFPs take 90 days minimum, plus all the other contract stuff. So by the time it went out in January. By the time we had someone signed, it was the end of May. So basically June is when their contract got executed for the new audit firm. Now that RFP, we understood, we need to get caught up. This is bad, we want to get caught up because it's our board's control. It's our final control on the finances. So it's really important to us to have that done. So we said, we want the first one done in 4 months, and we want the second one done by the end of the year. Well, they didn't, like I said, they didn't start working on it until June. Also in 2022, I told you the IT systems were bad. They were broken, really bad. So we implemented a new ERP financial system. So there's data migration issues. So anyone who knows anything about that you got to sift through all that data migration. So we essentially went through data migration and all of the audit related issues, and they got it done in 5 months. So it wasn't 4, it was 5. So November, they got us the 2022 audit, and the 2022 audit was clean. And then the 2023 audit, next board meeting, so we already have the draft. So next board meeting, the 17th, St. Patrick's Day, that will be approved, and we will be fully on time with all of our audits at that time. So it's unfortunate that it happened, but all we can do is fix it, which we did, and the audits are clean, and that's the most important thing, and they're being done right. The other thing we asked them to do in 2022, the new auditor, said we want a full accounting of the triangle TIF, because it showed about $30 million in the hole, but I said I want to know all the money over the years that's been transferred into there that's not being housed here and not being held in there. And so we found out there was about $17 million more, so that was the $47 million. And they recommended writing it off, which doesn't mean we don't owe it. It means that it's no longer in the TIF fund, it's now in the general fund. Let's be realistic. As I said, 335 years or almost 350 years to pay off the TIF debt with the current TIF increment money that's coming in. So let's be honest, we're not going to do that, right? We're going to pay it off normally, so we might as well just move it to the general fund. So we did. So that's the story on that. So the big story is no story. It was the 2021 was late, and it's all caught up in 2023, and then we're on our 2024 audit, which starts in 2025 anyways. So all good.
Okay, next one. The pensions are crushing Illinois. Any thoughts or ideas on mitigating this situation?
Well, again, it's the state. I talked about that, but Tier 2 needs to stay in place, and then we really need a Tier 3 pension. So, that's what we also need is another fix to the pensions, because Tier 2 is not enough, but that's at the state level, and they're going to have to do that.
Okay, there's 2 questions. I'll just go one at a time. The mall seems to be a hotbed for seedy activity. Is there any plans to fix this?
The mall is not a hotbed for seedy activity. So the mall is the safest mall in Chicagoland. It has been since even before I became mayor, although they didn't want to talk about it because they kept trying to say the mall should be torn down. And let me tell you, that's the dumbest thing ever. You show me a town that's torn down a mall and show me one that's successful. You won't find it, okay? So that was what they were espousing before, but the mall's always been safe, okay? But it's safe. It's even safer now, because what we've done, so we have real-time access to their cameras. We have a constant presence there, always have a presence there, probably inside and outside the mall. Sometimes you see them, sometimes you don't. Obviously, during high traffic Christmas season, we have more presence there. And that presence is meant to be a deterrent, and it works. But the most important thing, or one of the tools that we've used too, is the youth supervision program. You've probably heard a lot about the youth supervision program. And the youth supervision program was something Chief McCarthy actually asked me when we first met. He said, if there's one thing, can you please rebuild the relationship with the mall and see if you can get a youth supervision program? So I worked with them. They didn't want to do it. So we get to, I believe it was 2022, maybe 2021, but 2022 I think is when it went in place. But basically, no, I know it was 2021 for sure, because they said, well, it's not. We don't really have a crime problem. And I said, I understand that, but you have a perception problem, just like that question. You have a perception problem. How can you fix that perception? I said, make families feel more comfortable here. So they agreed. I said, what do you have to lose? I said, try it for 3 months. If it doesn't work, you can pull it out. We'll support you fully. So we did. We had officers at every door with them, part-time officers, but 14 doors we covered for a while. Now I think we're down to 2 during those programs, right? But those Fridays and Saturdays were the highest retail theft that we had at the mall. Since that's gone in place, I think we've had less than 10 retail thefts during those time periods since that's gone in place. And that's in 4 years, okay? It's been incredibly successful. Their businesses love it. Their patrons love it. The families love it. And the mall ownership loves it. So it exceeded their expectations so much, they're using it as a model and they put it in other places. So fantastic job of cooperating with what is our biggest asset in the business sector and the economy.
This one appears to be about Washington, D.C., but let's go. Mr. Mayor, speak to all about the noise in Washington, D.C. with tariffs and job cuts right now. And if you get past the rhetoric, can anything good come out of this?
So while I'm watching it, I'm not diving deep into it. I'm a little busy with the campaign, so I'm not diving deep into everything that's going on in Washington, D.C. at the moment. And I also think that my big picture comment to everyone is let things play out a bit. Much of this is negotiation tactics as it is actually doing stuff. Which we've seen. We've seen some of these things that were announced that suddenly now they're not happening and we got whatever we wanted. So I think there's a lot more to these things. They're a lot more complicated than black and white. And so I think you have to give some time for those things to play out. So don't react to every little thing you see. Just kind of let the whole thing happen for a bit would be my recommendation for everyone on all of those things. And that's either side of the aisle. I think you need to do that. And I think what we shouldn't see is what we saw the other night for a speech where, even when you say someone's cured of cancer and you don't stand up and clap, I mean, there's some things that should be common across everybody, even if you disagree on issues. And it's...
LaGrange Road is experiencing a lot of street racing. How do you fix it?
Obviously, if there's street racing, if we're there, if we have a presence there, and we always have a presence on LaGrange Road. Most of our beats actually cross LaGrange Road, so all of our beat cars flow in and out of there. Guess what happens if there's a cop there? They don't do it, right? So we do have stuff on camera. We catch people all the time. We have anything over 25 miles an hour. We have an ordinance that we can impound the car, and we do. So we have some very strong ordinances to that effect. Can we stop it all? No. I will also say some of those people that are street racing, they just have loud cars that they're trying to be loud and get attention. They're not actually driving fast, but their engines are loud, right? So there is some of that. I'm not saying that's all of that, because there certainly is. Believe me, we impound cars probably every month that have sped. I think our record is 130 miles an hour. We got someone on LaGrange Road. So we do get them, and we do catch them, and we do have patrols there all the time. But that's the best way we do it. And if you see something, call and say something. But a speeder, probably you call. By the time we get there, we're not going to see it.
You mean 25 miles over the speed limit?
I mean 25 miles over the speed limit. If they're 25 miles over the speed limit, we can, if we choose, impound the car. So that's a local ordinance that we've enacted.
Okay, Mayor, can you explain all the attacks on you related to the new Veterans Building and share the facts?
Well, have you heard any of those lately? Not since we opened it, really. So, because the building's way nicer than, in my opinion, I think most of our veterans, I know we've got a couple in here today, would say, I see a thumbs up there, but it's better than it's way better than the other building. It's got a bigger overall, it's got a bigger meeting space. The other rooms were broken into 2. The other building was it was past its useful life. I mean, that's just the reality. And it was either $600,000 to fix it, or we could use this space and put the veterans in something that's going to be good for at least 20 or 25 years. So the new memorial, I know some people have seen that. The new memorial that we moved over there and expanded it to cover all of the veterans that were killed in Vietnam War, not just one, is beautiful. It's fantastic. It'll be nice when the storage buildings behind it are completed. And then the asphalt will get repaved. That will come, I think by June that's going to be done. I think this week or so. In the coming weeks, I believe we're moving all the storage over to the new storage facilities. So that's all happening. So I think it's great. I'm a member of both posts that use it, Legion and the VFW. I think for the Legion's picnics, it might be great because instead of going somewhere else, they could do it right there by the forest. So it's a very nice space, very enjoyable. And since it's opened, I really haven't heard any complaints. A lot of complaints going up because here's one thing I've learned as mayor. There's two things people don't like. Change and the way things are.
Okay, Mayor, can you speak to what the village has done and can do to prevent real estate speculators from buying a house on a block and renting it to people who are not committed to keeping up their homes?
So that's a very good question. So we passed an ordinance that went into effect on January 1st. For those of you who don't know, many of you probably don't because it's kind of obscure, although it's on the board meeting. I know they're all live, but there's like 130 people watch them. But that's 130 more than used to be able to watch them. So we passed an ordinance, a rental ordinance, which limits the amount of rentals because you can't stop people from using their property rights, right? But what we can do is there are some limits we can place. So we can limit the number of rentals in a census block, okay? So that's held up in court elsewhere, so we limited the number of rentals that are allowed in a census block to 10%, okay? There are a few neighborhoods that are over 10%. They are grandfathered in, but when they sell, when their leases, when their lesser moves, they'll have, basically we'll eventually get them down to 10%, and there's no new ones. If yours doesn't have 10% and you wanted to rent your house, then you can rent, and you got to sign up for our rental inspections and all of that. So that is an effort to keep neighborhoods from getting completely run over by renters, number one. Then the other problem is speculators, and that was also a problem because we have one, I believe, Invitation Homes that owns like 26 homes, and it's been a little bit of a problem. So one of the things we did there is we limited the number of homes that a single investor can have to 8. Also something that's been tested in court and works. Now they still have 26 for now, but they can't buy any more. And as they sell, they're not going to be able to backfill. The other thing is a single property manager, so that 26 they have to have 4 property managers. A single property manager can only manage 8 properties. And another problem we were having is them giving the codes for people to get in, and then it goes. Then someone shares that code to someone who's nefarious. They come in and steal stuff out of there, break it, all that. We don't want that in our neighborhoods either. So they can't do that. In order to show a house, the manager has to be with who's ever looking at the house. So those were real things that we could do that have been tested legally. Our staff, it was the best work. Our staff is great. It's the best work they've ever done as far as researching this and getting this put in place. So that's what we've done to limit it. So we've recognized the problem. We've taken the actions we can. Now, what is excluded from that are anything that is approved by the board as apartments. So 9750, obviously that doesn't count. Orland Ridge, any other buildings like the buildings I grew up on Jefferson, that yellow building, that 800 square foot apartment, family of 5. That building is still a rental. So it doesn't affect places that doesn't count towards the 10%. It's things that we approved as ownership. You can only rent up to 10%. Where does it come into play a lot? Condos, townhouses, duplexes, those types of things. So you get a townhouse complex that's for ownership, you got 120 units, only 12 of them can end up being rented out. So, and the other thing that is excluded is if you rent to a family member. That's also excluded.
Okay, Mayor Peacock, how has your experience in the private sector helped you as mayor running for Orland Park? That's a good question. I believe it's all of those experiences have helped me be mayor in different ways. I think being in the military and the leadership experience I have and training in the military is unparalleled and was very, very, very important to shaping who I am and how I lead. So I think that was important. I think having grown up here is important because I understand the history. Looking more ahead, consulting also
very, very critical. You know, the MBA in my education, right? Aerospace engineering, I've learned how to solve problems. That's all you do in engineering is solve problems. Probably the most important skill you learn in engineering school is to solve problems, whether you become an engineer or not. It's just the way you think. You're always looking to solve problems. So that helped a lot. The MBA gave me the financial and business background. The financial background really helps a lot, and obviously helped running a business too. Consultant, I learned a lot about how to tackle new industries quickly and learn about them. Obviously, I became mayor, and I had to learn about a lot fast, and a lot of these things come at us out of the blue, and you have to pick it up quick. So I've learned how to sift through the noise, if you will, and make the right decision. Through that noise, COVID was a really good example of that, sifting through the noise, and I wouldn't have guessed that every decision would have been correct. But hindsight being 2020, I think it shows that we did make the right decisions all along. And consulting also taught me how to communicate a message to people, so that helps with communication a lot. And then having a small business, right? Understanding every part of that small business from top to bottom, from HR to you know, how you actually do the construction. So if you look across our departments, my experience, you know, police, okay? I come from the military. I understand how a paramilitary organization works. I understand leadership structure and chain of command and those types of things, right? So that helped. Public Works. I already was a contractor for snow plowing, a contractor for some construction projects, a contractor for tree removal, the ash tree removal, and for landscaping. So I had a pretty good understanding of how Public Works operated and a lot of the different things that they do, right? Communications. I understand how to communicate, right? Because I had to do it as a consultant, had to do it as a small business owner. You look at our parks. I was a coach. I helped schedule our fields and our gyms. I worked with Ray Piattoni, who's now our director, when he was scheduling the fields and the gyms. So I have familiarity with how that works, the needs of a basketball team and baseball. And while I didn't coach football, my son played it for a couple years. I played it, so I kind of understood that. So I kind of understood how our parks worked and had some relationships there as well. And then HR, right? Just the simple thing of 1 review, 2 reviews in 7 years out of all your department heads. I mean, that immediately you go, this is not professional, right? So all of those experiences helped me. And I think the other thing, and this goes back to the question of what are your biggest accomplishments, why I don't really think about it that much, is flying in a fighter. If you're thinking about what happened 10 seconds ago, you're going to die 10 seconds from now. So you need to be always looking ahead. You make your decision, you move on, and you keep going. And that's helped me a lot as mayor because it keeps me focused on the forward, not the back. I talk about the back because we're campaigning. We don't talk about the back when we're operating the village. We talk about the forward.
Okay, Mayor, can you explain why our taxes went up?
That's a broad question. So I'm assuming you mean property taxes. And so property taxes, again, there's a very good video from the village that explains this. It's a good 6 or 7 minutes. If that's the last one, we'll probably do that one, then I'll give closing. But it's 6 or 7 minutes long, tells you how property taxes work. But we levy a fixed amount, so think of it as a pie. The village levies, I think this year, $13.1 million, $13.1 million pie. Every property has a value. Your slice of that pie value is this. Whatever your proportion of the value is your proportion of the tax, okay? So there's the levy, which we've lowered by 2% since I took office. It's not a lot, but it's keeping it down, right? For example, the school district 135, I think it increased 7.5%, right? All the other ones were up about 4%, I believe. So, but even 4% is not that crazy, and my tax bill went up 30%. Right? So why did that happen? Remember I said you have the flat amount and then you have the pie. Well, if you take the pie and instead of dividing it into every property, if you just grouped all the commercial properties, all the single-family residential, and all the apartments as 3 different categories, the assessments on the houses went up 18%. The assessments on the commercial properties went down 14%. So it shrunk their pie, made ours bigger. And then apartments went down 1%, so they shrunk a little bit. So the residential portion got way bigger, meaning your piece of the pie expanded, even though nothing happened with your property. And that was done strictly by the assessor. The assessor of Cook County did that. He drove that. Sure, your different taxing bodies, I think the library 4.2%, they raised things up. But given all that, you should see about a 4% increase. I think Sean Compass's was 52% on our board. Okay? And that's because they shifted the burden. Fritz Kagi, our assessor, took it upon himself to shift the burden to southwest and south homeowners. Because the city went up, I think, 2% for houses and 4% in the north suburbs, I believe. It was somewhere like that. So it wasn't just us that got impacted, it was all those other, our neighbors to the east. Some of them have tax bills that are 20% of the value of their home. I mean, it's obscene. So that's why whoever asked that question, it's a good one. But that's why they're going up. So we've done what we can. We've kept our levy, lowered it a little bit, and we've also had a lot more properties come in. But it's just that shift in the burden that happened.
Mayor, could you describe the people you're running with?
Could I describe the people? Do you want a physical description, or do you want me to tell you what the? So Sean's shorter. He's got glasses, kind of, with a beard back there. Brian, who left, I believe, is he still here? I saw him back there. He's the one that's very dapper and just dressed to the nines and looks super professional. He owns an accounting firm, of course. So no, seriously, the folks I'm running with. So Sean Compass, running for re-election. Fantastic trustee, works his tail off. He really does. He works his tail off. He's super smart. Might be the smart. I have a lot of really smart people on the board, but he might be the smartest one of them all. And he's certainly the smartest when it comes to technology. There's no doubt about that. So he understands technology. He is just a dedicated hard worker. He's a volunteer for our ESDA, so he volunteers to go out there and direct traffic and all that. He's very engaged with our employees. He's just a fantastic guy. Brian Reardon. Brian Reardon also super smart, great guy. He's an attorney. And when I got there were 3 attorneys on the board, all sole practitioners, real estate, DUI, that kind of stuff. Okay, nothing wrong with that. Brian is a partner in a very large firm that they do a lot of stuff, corporate law, other things too. He grew up in Beverly, grew up in Country Club Hills, and then lived in Beverly for a bit and then moved out to Orland Park. He's been here for about 12 years. He does have a mediocre golf game. He's my partner in our 2-man game, but anyways, he's super smart, and he brings a lot to the table for us when we deal with a lot of legal issues that come through because we're Orland Park, we're big pockets, that kind of thing, and he is really, really good at that. And if you watch him on the board floor, when he makes comments, they're very insightful, very smart. He really pays attention to what's going on. Just a fantastic guy. He's got 4 kids here in Orland Park. Going into they're in our school systems, right? Actually, one of them is now off to college, but so 1 boy, 3 girls, and just fantastic. By the way, I forgot to mention, Sean has 1 daughter who's just an amazing kid as well. Brian, who's newer to the board, is running for election. He was appointed to the board as clerk, and I appointed him because he is just hands down, just he's just a fantastic business guy, fantastic person. Anyone who saw his video where he was Man of the Year for a charity that he sits on a board, he's just a fantastic guy. He's been the president of the OYA. He's coached, done all that, again. An accountant has his own firm, which is a fairly sizable firm. I mean, it's a mid-market firm. It's not giant, but and he's just sits on a bunch of different boards, and he really just does a great job as clerk and provides a lot of insight to us as well. Carol, who's here today, she's retired now, and she sits on our technology commission, and she's got a wealth of business background knowledge. She's also lived here for a couple decades, so at Plus, and she's been engaged with our technology commission and doing a great job there, and she'll be a great addition to our board, because she is replacing Joni, who's done a great job. for us as well. As many of you may know, Joni had a really horrific car accident, and she's had a lot of surgeries, but she's done an amazing job of still doing her job in spite of all that. So, and Carol will, and Joni's done just a fantastic job considering all she's gone through to still dedicate herself to the village. It speaks volumes to her character. And Carol will be a fantastic addition to the board, replacing her, and will do a great job. She's been great on the Technology Commission. She has a great business background, and she'll provide that perspective that we need.
Thank you.
Last one, and then I'm going to close.
Okay, there's two.
Make them quick ones.
All right, fast. Okay, Mayor, if any of the other candidates get elected, how could or will the board play nice so we don't have a board like when you came on in 2017 and 18?
Well, so that's a really good question. So for one, I won't treat them like I was treated, which is they hired their person to be the village manager before I was even sworn in. It's not on video, so you can't watch how I was treated every night. I know at least one of our board members came to the board meetings, and the reason he ran for trustee and got involved is because he was appalled every night, accused of crimes every night. I mean, it was brutal. It was horrible. Should not treat, if the people choose someone to be elected, they should be allowed to lead, and so they'll be brought in. And I think a good example is the last election, or not the last election, because nobody was opposed. 4 years ago, Pat O'Sullivan ran with the other slate and was elected as clerk. Okay? And I think Pat O'Sullivan would tell you that he was treated very well by the board. He was brought in, and I think if Pat O'Sullivan didn't move, I think he would have ran with us this time. So I think that we have a history of showing that we treat people fairly when they come and with an open mind.
Okay, last question. Seeing that sports brings a community together, what are we doing to promote what we have to offer with our parks, and what can we do to work with the school districts to bring back support for the local school programs utilizing the fields?
So we have an IGA right now with the fields for the schools. So that IGA where we use their fields and we maintain them and we do all that kind of stuff and we schedule them and they get first priority. So we already have that with the schools. As far as advertising, we do like 30-some tournaments. Obviously you have New Lenox building a complex. You have Tinley saying they're building a complex. We'll see what happens. At the end of the day, our fields are for us, but it's great when we get to use them when they're not being used by our folks. So, and we'll continue to do that because we have great fields, we have great recreation, and we continue to push that out via the Chicago Southland Visitors Bureau and others. And so I'm going to close really quickly. So thank you all for coming out today. It's really unfortunate, again, that my opponent didn't give you the courtesy of showing up too. We got through a lot more questions that way, I guess. So that was good. So, you know, in closing, I just kind of look at this election as it's a clear choice. You have someone with a 32-year record and someone with an 8-year record. The person with the 32-year record doesn't want to talk about his record, doesn't talk about it at all. I could probably list more accomplishments that he has than he can because he doesn't know, because he never talks about them, right? And nobody can sit on the board for 32 years and not accomplish some good things, right? And I've got an 8-year record. They really don't attack my record. They just attack me personally. I think that tells you a lot. So let's compare the records. My opponent raised the pay to $150,000, getting 2 pensions, 1 from the village, all for part-time work. Right? Voted against getting rid of the pensions, voted against term limits. On the other hand, I lowered the pay, not taking a pension, got rid of pensions for elected officials, voted for term limits. Transparency. I'm here in a live stream. He's not. He blocked stuff from being videoed on the board. I got it put in. Parks. The previous 20 years, his 20 years as a trustee till I arrived, 10 parks in 20 years. 1 every 2 years, you've got 66 parks. He voted to block the fixing of John Humphrey Complex. Voted to block more money going into parks until we got control of the board. Then we were able to fix John Humphrey Complex, Schuschler Park, add Centennial Park West, and fix 32 other parks in 5 years. Compare that, 20 versus 5. Roads, over 20 years, they declined to 40% of our roads were in poor condition. Not only did our opponent vote against roads, he called those of us that voted for spending more money on roads criminals for doing so. He wrote an article saying we were criminals. And I see nodding heads. That is a fact. You can look it up. He called us criminals for spending more money on roads. Okay? Now our roads, less than 17% of them are in poor condition. Okay? And it's going to be better. It's going to be less than 10% after about 2 or 3 more years because we're getting through them and fixing them. All right? Let's talk about public safety. He talks about, basically he's going to give something to the unions. I don't know what, right, to get their support. But let's talk about it. We had a good department. Our department's even better. We've kept you safe in the riots, got them all this gear, did all of that, and we have the lowest 6 years of incident crimes in the last 31 years. That, I think, says it all. But then we did all of that, and then let's look at the finances. My opponent lost $47 million on a triangle trying to play developer. Drove $110 million of debt. Okay, from 13 million to 110 in his 20 years on the board. It's down to 86 million. We did all of that. All of the roads, all of the parks. John Humphrey, I forgot to mention with the police, the firing range, Schuessler Park, Centennial Park West, all of that, and the debt's down 24 million. I think it's pretty clear when you look at our records. But say, well, what are you going to do going forward? Well, we have no idea what he's going to do going forward. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do going forward is the same stuff we've been doing. We're going to keep implementing the plan that we've got in place. Going to keep fixing your roads, fixing your parks, and get us to a sustainable solution in the future. We're going to stay transparent, keep everything on there, and we're going to work for you. I don't have a big platform anymore because we're implementing the platform. All of it's being implemented. If you go back to 2017 and look at that platform, all of it's being implemented. We're going to keep implementing that, keep pushing that forward, keep getting it done. Because 4 years from now, when I'm no longer mayor, or 4.5, when I'm no longer mayor, then the next person is going to be in a position where they're just maintaining stuff. They're not having to fix what was broken and left neglected for so long, like when I got here. So that's our goal. That's what we're going to do. We're going to keep putting people over politics. Thank you all for coming today. Thank you for those of you who are watching or are going to watch later for being on the live stream. I apologize to all of you for not having my opponent here. He turned down this and another forum as well. It's a shame because you deserve to hear that. You deserve to have these questions answered. I had some questions that were directed to me and were pointed. There would have been more, and I'd have been happy to answer them. And I encourage people to come to the State of the Village, which is in a couple of weeks. Also to the Mayor's Breakfast as well, where those who don't get into politics, they just talk about what we've accomplished in the village, but I can answer a lot of those questions. So thank you again. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.